Okay.
Got it.
You want to start?
Yeah, okay. Breaking news. Bill C-11 was passed in the Senate.
This is a developing story, everyone. Breaking news is coming because the bill has passed through all stages of the House. It was given royal assent late last night, Thursday night. It is now law. The controversial online streaming bill is now law. So before we begin, some people don't know what Bill C-11 is. So Bill C-11 gives control to the CRTC to ensure streaming services and social media platforms promote Canadian content. So when did you first hear about the bill, Elliot?
Me, I heard it from actually JJ on YouTube, who's located in Vancouver, because he talks a lot about it.
Okay. Yeah, I've same for me actually. I definitely followed JJ McCullough on YouTube for updates on Bill C-11. He gave a good approach to it. Also, and there was big backlash from conservatives, right? They really didn't support the bill, and it
Yeah.
seemed like every other party supported the bill. The Bloc Québécois supported it, the NDP, of course, the
Yeah.
Liberals. Do you think, Elliot, that it would have made a difference if there was more support?
Like for the conservatives?
Yeah, like do
Yeah.
you think if the public, like there was more support from the public?
Well, so the thing is that I think even if you're like for the bill, I think you still have a certain amount of skepticism towards it anyway. So like, I think it got a lot of like people that hated it. Like my For You page was basically just people hating it. So I think it could have made a difference, but it was still a lot of backlash.
Yeah, and like you said, you're always still skeptic, even if you support the bill. There was some senators in the liberal, I think it was the independent senators group who were appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau, who had to introduce amendments, and because they still weren't sure that the bill would
Yeah.
pass. I'm not quite sure about that, but I believe that's what happened. And in relation to amendments, when the amendments were introduced in the Senate, they were then sent over to the House, which the government basically went and said, you know what? We don't need to put like the amendments were that it would not affect user generated content. So that if that amendment were to pass, it would go fully with it would be law that this bill will not affect user generated content and will not affect their For You pages, for example,
Yeah.
or their YouTube algorithms. So, and the government totally said no to that amendment and instead basically said, trust us. They said it will be okay. So, do you think that the government should have just put that into law instead of just saying to trust us? Because definitely, I think there could have been more support if they actually put those amendments into law.
I think I think the idea of the government controlling any of those algorithms is like however you phrase it is still gonna be like generally negative. So like I think they would have got less backlash, but I still would think it would have been pretty negative.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so they were sent back to the Senate, and the Senate introduced a bunch of motions that were kind of in relation to it. They passed the bill eventually, but there was definitely they were trying to conservative senators were trying to stall debate. We definitely saw that. We saw a motion to rush the debate. The Senator Mark Gold, he introduced a motion that would speed up the process and would limit the amount of debate time that'd be allowed so that they can get it passed further. We saw the bill being stalled a couple times by uh, conservative senators who tried to debate certain other matters for hours at a
Yeah.
time, which definitely stalled it. But do you think that rushing debate on things, especially a controversial issue, should happen? Do you think they should definitely, especially since it was so controversial, do you think they should have taken the time to fully debate it and hear everyone's voice? Or do you think that rushing it was the right play because they've been at it for years?
Well, I think that it just shows that they're kind of like, I guess, desperate to like kind of just get it through. Just like the same thing with the Keep Kids in School Act by Minister Lecce.
Yes, yes.
They both rushed it and they were both pretty negative. So like it just shows that they kind of want to just get it through.
Yeah. So tonight or last night, we're now Friday morning. Last night it passed, and at a very actually earlier hour, 5:30, we knew it was going to be debated then. And then it was like really quickly given royal assent. So now the bill is now in play. It is now law for the government to ask the CRTC to ensure streaming service and social media platforms promote Canadian content, CanCon. And some of the things I noticed, and the conservatives definitely brought up into debate, was the idea of Canadian content. So there's a bunch of shows that were made in Canada, but and they had Canadian actors and actresses. They were um, filmed on Canadian soil. They were written by Canadians, but they don't qualify as CanCon. So it doesn't really. I don't really understand myself. What do they mean by that? If they don't, if many Canadian movies aren't considered Canadian content.
Well, what I think is the government kind of wants to make it seem like they like, for example, like in Canada, you'll get a lot of Canadian content creators or whatever. But like a lot of these like movies and shows, like there's no actual like definition. So like it's like where do you draw the line?
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a very complicated bill,
Yeah.
Um, so next up in the process, after it was given royal assent, so there'll be consultations between I think the government and the CRTC over how to make this law actually make it effective. So this is not it's like not like I think the bill was given royal assent around 6 o'clock or even five like 5:30. No, 5:30 was when it passed. But it's not like the bill as soon as it's law you're gonna see your favorite show, Modern Family or Designated Survivor, thrown down to the bottom of the list. It's not like that's gonna happen. It's gonna be a bit because they still need to find a way to get it through. So just for our viewers there, it's gonna take time before the bill is fully in effect. It's not just gonna take shape right away. Um, so do you think so the conservatives are leading the process. They led kill Bill C-11. That was their motto. Now they're going probably to repeal Bill C-11. That's what they're looking
Yeah.
for. So if the conservatives win the next election, which could be soon, it could be in 3 years, or 3 years, who knows? Do you think that they would actually repeal Bill C-11, or do you think they'll forget about it if it's not real, if it's not affecting them?
Well, like I think the thing is like technically Justin Trudeau on YouTube, he actually had released a YouTube account, and let's say the two top two federal political people are Pierre and Trudeau. Pierre is more successful in terms of like social media, and like when I look at Justin Trudeau's videos, like the top comments are like really negative. And so I think technically Justin Trudeau can demonetize Pierre and like kind of just take control over that like area.
Yeah. So, okay. There is there is now that the bill's in law, we don't really know, like I said, if it is indeed a plan for censorship by the government or if it actually isn't, because there's still the thought that the that there's still actually isn't a plan for censorship and it could just be about promoting Canadian content, like the government said. So do do you think do you think we will see government censorship in the end? And you can make a nonpartisan response by your response, you don't have to
But
say you believe in government censorship, but or not. But do you think that this bill will end up being what the conservatives have spelled it out to be?
I think that like the way that the government like when I look at social media and things that are generated by the government, sometimes I look at the comments and they're just like totally just ripping on the government. And so I think like I wouldn't be surprised if they try to like silence the negativity. I wouldn't be
Okay.
surprised if they try to do that, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, and last question from me. Um, do you believe that um do you believe that there is that this bill is censorship? The last question was, do you believe it will happen? But do you believe that this government's plan is to silence the opposition and censor user-generated content, or do you think it is actually to promote Canadian heritage? Because we saw this bill a long time ago, Bill C-10. And I remember I was making sort of kind of videos like this a long time ago just for my grandpa and stuff. And I remember being like thinking if I were to do a podcast or something someday, how would I be affected by this? Because it does affect the algorithms and stuff. So do you think it is, and I remember being concerned back then, but do you think it is actually, do you think Bill C-11 is actually for promoting Canadian content, or do you think it is a plan to censor the internet?
I would think it would be a plan to censor the government and censor the internet. But like I think if they do get to that, like they're deleting comments and whatever stage. At that point, I think that'll take a couple years. And you did say that by the time there's a next election, like Justin Trudeau could basically lose because of that. So like it's really what depending on what he wants to do.
Okay. Yeah. So we, as you know, have, we don't know the answers yet to all these questions. But we will definitely find out. Just all you gotta do is look at your Twitter page in 6 months, and if you and you'll definitely find out what the true meaning of this bill is, because the government has not. If the government put the amendments into law stating that user-generated content would have been left out of this bill, I personally do not believe there would be as big of an opposition, because it would be in law, and if they were to censor the internet, they'd be breaking the law. So I think it will be very interesting to see what ends up happening, because we really don't know. The government saying trust us is not a does not put it in place saying, oh, it's not going to be affecting user generated content. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to find out. So hopefully we'll keep talking about Bill C-11 and what will happen now that it's law.
Great.
All right,
Thank you.
now to the episode.